Welcome back to the Unseen Wisdom. Before we get started, don't forget to hit that like button and leave a comment. And subscribe to stay updated on our deep dives into global events. Today we're tackling a heavy situation unfolding in the Democratic Republic of Congo. A conflict that's been simmering for decades, but has recently taken a really tragic turn.
Yeah, it's a story that really underscores how quickly things can escalate in a region as volatile as Eastern DRC. We're seeing that with the M23 rebel group, who are now pushing dangerously close to Goma, a city of 2 million.
And what makes this even more alarming are the reports we're getting from news outlets and press releases. The M23 rebels haven't just been advancing, they've been capturing strategically important towns along the way. That puts them practically on Goma's doorstep.
Right, and you can imagine what that means for the people living there. We're already seeing a massive humanitarian crisis unfold, with thousands fleeing towards Goma, desperate for safety. This is putting an immense strain on the city, with overcrowded camps and hospitals struggling to cope with the influx of wounded.
It's a truly heartbreaking situation. And it hits even closer to home for South Africa, with the news about the SANDF. 9 South African soldiers, part of a Southern African Development Community Intervention Force, were killed in a fierce battle with the M23. It's the highest casualty count for South Africa in over a decade.
That's right, and this news really brings the human cost of this conflict into sharp focus. These soldiers were part of a larger SADC effort deployed at the request of the DRC government to try and bring stability to the region.
But there's been a lot of criticism, especially from the South African National Defense Union, or SANDF. They're saying that the deployed troops were severely under-equipped and lacking crucial support like air cover and logistical resources.
And what's striking about SANDF's criticism is that it raises serious questions about the preparedness and effectiveness of the SADC interventions as a whole. Are they truly equipped to handle a group as determined and organized as the M23? It's a question South Africans especially need answers to.
And it adds another layer of complexity to an already tangled situation. We also have to consider the UN peacekeeping force, which has been gradually withdrawing troops from the DRC.
The UN's withdrawal, which seems to stem from the DRC government's dissatisfaction with their performance, is a critical factor here. It leaves a security vacuum that the M23 has been quick to exploit, further destabilizing the region.
And then adding fuel to the fire, you have accusations flying back and forth.
Yeah.
The DRC government, along with the UN, is pointing fingers at Rwanda, alleging that they're actively supporting the M23 with troops and weaponry.
Rwanda, of course, vehemently denies these claims. They're pushing for a different approach, emphasizing the need for dialogue and addressing what they see as the root causes of the conflict. One of their main concerns is the presence of the FDLR, the Democratic Forces for the Liberation of Rwanda, operating within the DRC. They see this group as a direct threat to their national security.
So you have this incredibly complex web of actors, each with their own agenda and perspective. You have the M23 making gains on the ground, a humanitarian crisis unfolding, the SADC struggling to contain the violence, the UN withdrawing, and Rwanda caught in the crossfire accusations. It's overwhelming, to say the least.
What I find particularly fascinating is how this situation highlights the interconnectedness of regional and global events. For example, the ripple effects of the Russia-Ukraine war have directly impacted the UN mission in the DRC. Ukraine had to withdraw troops and equipment, including vital helicopters, which further weakened the UN's ability to maintain stability.
It's a stark reminder that what happens on one side of the world can have serious consequences in a completely different region. And in this case, it's the Congolese people who are bearing the brunt of these global forces.
Absolutely. And that brings us back to the core of this issue, the human cost of conflict. It's easy to get lost in the political maneuvering and military strategies, but we can't forget the individuals whose lives are being torn apart by this violence.
The families forced to flee their homes, the children growing up in overcrowded refugee camps, the medical workers struggling to save lives in overwhelmed hospitals. Those are the stories that truly drive home the devastating impact of this conflict. What stands out to you as we delve into these human stories?
What really strikes me is, the resilience of the human spirit. Even in the face of unimaginable hardship. You see it in the aid workers risking their lives to deliver essential supplies, the doctors working tirelessly to treat the wounded, and just ordinary people helping their neighbors any way they can.
Yeah, it's a powerful reminder that even amidst the chaos and despair, there's still hope. And there are people dedicated to making a difference. But it also raises a critical question. What role should the international community, and specifically South Africa, play in trying to resolve this seemingly intractable conflict?
That's the million-dollar question, isn't it? And as we've been discussing, there are no easy answers. We see this ongoing debate between military intervention and diplomatic solutions, and both approaches have their limitations.
The deployment of the SADC intervention force, which includes those South African troops, is a clear example of military intervention. But the tragic loss of life and SANDF's criticisms point to the serious risks and potential shortcomings of that approach.
Exactly. And on the other hand, we see the UN peacekeeping force withdrawing, which, while prompted by the DRC government's dissatisfaction, also raises concerns about creating a security vacuum that groups like the M23 can exploit.
So is there a way to break this cycle of violence? Can we find a path towards a lasting peace in eastern DRC?
It's a daunting task, but I believe there is. But it requires a more nuanced approach than just sending in troops or hoping for a quick diplomatic fix. We need to recognize that this conflict is fueled by deep-rooted issues that have been festering for decades.
We're talking about poverty, inequality, ethnic tensions, weak governance, competition for resources. All of these factors create fertile ground for conflict to take root and flourish.
Precisely. And simply trying to impose a solution from the outside, whether through military force or diplomatic pressure, is unlikely to work. We need a more holistic and inclusive approach that addresses these underlying causes.
So what would that look like in practice?
Well, it starts with acknowledging the complexity of the situation and understanding the perspectives of all the actors involved. It means engaging in genuine dialogue even with those we disagree with, and building trust through consistent and meaningful actions.
And it also means empowering local communities, giving them a voice in the peace-building process, and supporting their efforts to build a better future for themselves.
Absolutely. Sustainable peace can't be imposed from the outside. It has to be built from the ground up, with the full participation of the people most affected by the conflict.
But even with the best intentions, operating in such a volatile and insecure environment presents immense challenges. We see reports of aid workers being targeted, aid convoys being attacked, and humanitarian assistance being diverted or stolen. How do we address these immediate needs while simultaneously working towards a long-term political solution?
It's a delicate balancing act. The humanitarian imperative must always be a priority, but we have to be smart about how we deliver aid. Working closely with local organizations and communities, understanding their needs and ensuring their safety is crucial.
And that requires a coordinated effort from all parties involved, including those rebel groups. Everyone needs to understand that humanitarian aid workers are there to help, not to take sides in the conflict.
Right. And beyond immediate aid, we need to be thinking about long-term solutions, investing in education, healthcare, and economic development. These are the building blocks for a more stable and prosperous future.
It's a long and arduous journey, and there will inevitably be setbacks along the way. But we can't afford to give up hope. The people of Eastern DRC deserve a chance at peace and a future free from violence.
And their stories of resilience and determination should inspire us to continue working towards that goal, even when the challenges seem insurmountable.
You know, as we've been discussing the complexities of this conflict, it's easy to feel overwhelmed by the sheer scale of the challenges. But I think it's important to remember that even small steps can make a difference.
I completely agree. There are glimmers of hope to be found even amidst the violence and despair. For example, you mentioned the aid workers and doctors working tirelessly on the ground. Their dedication, their commitment to alleviating suffering is incredibly inspiring.
Yeah, it really is. It's a testament to the power of human compassion. The refusal to turn away from suffering, even when it feels overwhelming.
And beyond the humanitarian efforts, we also see signs that dialogue, however fragile, is still possible.
Yeah.
The DRC and Rwanda have, at times, come to the negotiating table, which at least demonstrates a recognition that a purely military solution isn't the answer.
Right. That willingness to engage in dialogue, even if it's been sporadic and hasn't yet yielded the desired results, is a crucial foundation to build upon. It suggests that somewhere beneath the layers of mistrust and animosity, there's a flicker of understanding that lasting peace requires a different approach.
Exactly. And that's where the real work begins. Nurturing that flicker into a sustainable flame. It requires patience, persistence, and a willingness to see beyond the immediate crisis and address the long-standing grievances that fuel this conflict.
And that's where I think the international community has a vital role to play, not just in providing humanitarian aid, which is obviously crucial, but also in supporting and facilitating a genuine peace-building process.
Absolutely. It's about creating a space where dialogue can flourish, where trust can be rebuilt, and where all parties feel heard and respected. It's a long and delicate process, but it's the only path towards a truly sustainable peace.
And that process needs to involve more than just the political and military elites.
Yeah.
It has to include civil society organizations, community leaders, and most importantly, the voices of those directly impacted by the conflict.
Right. Their experiences, their perspectives, their aspirations, those need to be at the heart of any peace-building effort. They're the ones who know firsthand the true cost of conflict, and they're the ones who will ultimately have to live with the consequences of any peace agreement.
So as we wrap up this deep dive into the conflict in the DRC, we're left with a sense of both urgency and hope. The situation on the ground is dire. The challenges are immense. But there are also glimmers of possibility, signs that a different future is within reach.
And it reminds us that we can't afford to be passive observers. We all have a role to play in supporting peace, whether it's staying informed, advocating for change, or supporting organizations working to make a difference.
The situation in the DRC is a stark reminder of the interconnectedness of our world, how events in one region can have ripple effects across the globe. It's a call to action for all of us to engage in these complex issues, to seek understanding, and to use our voices to advocate for peace and justice. Thank you for joining us on this journey. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe to The Unseen Wisdom for more deep dives into the most pressing issues of our time.